We haven't seen it.
It's still a mystery.
I lost you all for a minute.
That's right.
Okay, well, I think we should maybe start really, and if anyone comes late, then they're very welcome. So
That's
it's
right.
obviously very informal, but I just want to say thank you for everyone for coming along and sharing in this wonderful celebration. 100 years since the great lady was born and gave us this great idea that we've all kind of, well, at least some of us have really appreciate. So I just wanted to say, welcome and thank you. What I was hoping is Gareth might say a few words, and then I want to read a little bit, I promise a tiny little bit from the book, and then I thought maybe if anyone wants to say a few words, anything they want to say about Elaine really, that would be great, and then we just sort of break into just random chat again. So it's nothing formal, I just thought it would be a good opportunity in this weird world of COVID to sort of virtually get together. And of course, thanks to Elaine, we've got all these people from all these different continents, really. So it's fantastic. So is that okay? Gareth, do you want to start and say a few words, and then I'll do something, and then we'll just go around if anyone wants to say anything.
Okie doke. I only remembered 10 minutes ago that I was going to be expected to say something. So, as you probably know, I have only in recent years, oh God.
Oh, you done.
Wait, I'll be back. That's fine. Right. Now I can see you all. Right. Only recently been involved in all this stuff, and I've met some of you, and I've had very interesting conversations with others of you, and it's been very fascinating. But one of the things I've noticed from my contact with all of you, and also in the book, is that most of the people involved in Aquatic Ape feel kind of isolated and beleaguered, as if they're kind of working alone in a hostile world that cannot understand what it is you're trying to say, what it is that is so obvious to us. And certainly in Algis's book, there's a reflection of this. But I think that's partly because everybody's kind of working in their own niche speciality. And to the people working on the human brain, it's obvious that the human brain is what makes us human. It's the essence and heart of the aquatic theory and the marine nutrition and all the rest of it, and is beyond argument. And then other people are really excited about bipedalism, the human foot, the hip, the legs, everything about it is so extraordinary. And as a biped, it's what defines us as a human being. Other people are fascinated with the skin, the naked skin that's so different in every way to other primate skin. And people working in one field don't feel appreciated. Why isn't everybody else in Aquatic Ape jumping up and down with excitement at this thing that I've discovered in this little area that I'm a specialist in, and which is beyond question. But I hope, especially with Algis's book, we can see that there's a whole range of people all working on different areas of the same thing. It's like the thing about the wise men who got hold of an elephant. One's holding the trunk, one's holding the tail, one holding the ear, and one's holding the tusk, and they're all describing something very different and think the others are all idiots for not appreciating what they know for sure. And in actual fact, it's still all the same elephant. But I do know that Elaine appreciated everything that you were all doing, and that all of you are helping immensely in building up a complete picture of who we are. and the other thing that I noticed from speaking to you all and from Algis's book is about the hostility. David Attenborough called it venomous attacks from the paleoanthropological field in general. But there's nothing to those attacks. There's no substance to them. And there's never been any solid rational argument against the aquatic ape. Now, I wish Dimitri was here already, because he told me that he's been a fan of this ever since he came across it. And what he did just in the last week or so, he sent a link to Elaine's TED talk to all his friends. And he says, now they are all Generation Z, whatever that is, and millennials. They're all young people. And they all said, yeah, that makes sense. And I remember when I was in my late teens, first reading The Descent of Woman, that was it. Yeah, that makes sense. Don't have any problem with it. But Dimitri did mention one friend who was outraged, took it as a personal attack on his own beliefs, a personal attack of himself and his rationality, and was really distraught. And they didn't speak for a week until the election came up, and then Trump became more important. However, so I'd recently come across a concept called, what the hell's it called? I got it written down somewhere. Cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is a very, very distressing thing, where it's presented to you a substantial piece of evidence, rock solid, that what you believe and have believed in all your life is complete and utter nonsense. And it is very, very traumatic. And there are various strategies for coping with it. The most common one is to completely blank it, ignore it, and have nothing to do with it, and pretending it doesn't exist, that there is no elephant in the room, because there cannot be an elephant in the room, because we've never known of any occasion when there has been an elephant in the room. And our world has been fine up until now. We cannot let this thing in. And you had the same thing going back a few years. There was a lot in the news about cults. And children who've been brought up in a cult, in a religious cult, and were having a hard time. They got rescued from the cult. They got brought out from that setting. And then they had to go through a painful process that in those days they called deprogramming. And this seemed to be as psychologically damaging and distressing to have those concepts on which their life was built completely demolished in front of them. So we shouldn't get too concerned with people like Dimitri's friend and other editors of certain anthropological journals that we could mention getting too upset about this, because they can't help it. And the more we go on at them, the more we're hurting them. We should leave them alone and be a bit kinder to them. It's a handicap. It must be a handicap. It must be difficult for them. A little bit of, that's enough science. I was going to mention a little bit of art and philosophy, because why not? Because Mum was originally on the art side and came over. And it was just the thing, Alexander Pope said, the proper study of humanity is man. And that is exactly what Elaine did, and that's exactly what we are doing to answer Gauguin's question. What was it called? D'où sommes-nous? Qui sommes-nous? Who are we? Where do we come from? And this is exactly what the aquatic theory establishes. And it is the proper study of mankind. And it is a fundamental question. So we're in the right place, looking at the right thing. eventually the significance and the importance is inevitably going to come up. There is no opposition to this. But the other thing we learned from art, what somebody told Michelangelo, if you want to become famous as a sculptor, you must create a great body of work. And I've seen the same advice to painters, artists. If you want to be collectible, you have to produce a lot of paintings. There's no good producing 1 or 2 masterpieces like The Descent of Woman and The Scars of Evolution. They're wonderful, but it needs a great body of work. And now we've got Algis, who on his own has produced a great body of work. This thing's 500 pages long about Elaine. And it's an immense achievement. I couldn't have begun to do it, and certainly not to do it justice. That's about all I've got to say, really. I don't know if we should now all sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Elaine.
Happy birthday to you.
Hooray.
Thank you.
Right, well, thank you very much, Gareth. I mean, you kind of stole my thunder a bit there, because I was just going to read the very first bit of the book, and it starts, Elaine Morgan was born on Sunday, the 7th of November, 1920, and if everything goes to plan, these pages will go to print exactly 100 years later. So what better way to start than with a toast to Elaine? If you have a bottle of sparkling wine handy, or anything really.
A bottle of money?
Cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee, all right?
Yeah.
Coffee.
Cheers. Nice.
I just wanted to say that's how the book starts, and obviously I'm not going to read much of the book. It's quite a long book, and we all, I think, to some extent are familiar with her amazing life. But I just want to go to the end bit, and I'm quite pleased with the last bit of the book, I think, and I kind of want to just read the last bit. So I'm kind of having a rant at the end of the book about how this great woman has been not listened to enough by the anthropological community. And so I kind of then, after this rant, I end it like this. I say, at least she was appreciated by some learned people. The oldest extant biological learned society in the world, the Linnaean Society, quietly proposed her as a fellow, and its members voted her in alongside the original heroes of this story. How appropriate is that? Charles Darwin, Alfred Russel Wallace, and Elaine Morgan. All on that woman, so well deserved. What a privilege it has been to witness her work, to be able to report on it, and for a short time at least to have known her. Hundreds of us now follow her lead, and hopefully soon there'll be thousands. Thank you, Elaine Morgan, for giving us the best idea pertaining to human evolution since Darwin. Now, where are all those young inquisitive minds we keep hearing about? There are scores of PhDs to be done and careers to be made here. All you need is a little bravery, curiosity, and an independent mind. You know what that actually means, don't you? It means when everyone you talk to, including people who you think are more expert than you are, says it's rubbish, and you start thinking, well, they can't all be wrong, can they? You have to think what the evidence tells you, and remember what Elaine said at the age of 89 in her TED Talk. Yes, they can all be wrong. Cases when they've all got it wrong. Anyway, so I don't know if each person wants to say a few words. Maybe I don't know, Kathleen, would you like to say a few words first, and then we just take turns and just say something?
Hi, yes. Good morning from Canada. One thing, I really enjoyed Garrett's talk, I haven't got the book yet, Algis, but because I don't have Kindle, but you say there's an app I can get, so I will be doing that. One thing that really struck me was the body of work that Garrett was just talking about. I think that's what we really have to do, is those of us that write and are really, strongly wedded to the aquatic ape hypothesis. I think we have to just keep putting out our data and keep talking to everybody. I don't know if Garrett mentioned it, but I've seen this in surveys, a survey before, that the public has no problem with humans evolving from a water environment. They have no problem with humans using, eating fish or mollusks or whatever back in the early hominid days. It's the academics that seem to have this, and maybe it's because their career is so wedded to man the hunter that's why they have this wind up, that they just refuse to even, it's like you were saying, Garrett, it's cognitive dissonance. They just refuse to admit that there's such a thing. And, in my own work with looking at early hominins and fish and freshwater environments, there's so much evidence out there. I'm building up a bibliography, a large group of references that say this in one way or another, and it's just they tend to have been ignored by the academic specialists, shall we say. So all I'm saying is, get your stuff, do your work, get your stuff like Algis says, get it out in print, online, digital, and just by sheer numbers, people will start to realize that what we're saying has to have some basis in fact.
Thanks, Kathy. And thanks very much for getting up so early. What time is it there? It must be really early in the morning.
It's, what is it, 7:24.
So how about Andrea, do you want to go next? You want to say?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's great. Yes, and I think it would be a good idea if I shared with you my bibliography that I've built up, and mine's from a slightly, I suppose, a very highly personal quest to try and improve the way that swimming is taught. And from my point of view, Elaine's work, it can have a massive influence on how swimming is taught if people start to understand that we have that if science starts to accept that we have an aquatic element in our past, then that's going to influence swimming. And at the moment, since I went to the conference in 2013 and in London, and it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it immensely. And I'd been teaching swimming at that point, I think, for about 9 years. So I was very keen to explore all of the angles that were at the conference. So I made masses of notes and then went away, and I've written many articles in the Swimming Times magazine, which is an industry magazine, which is now sadly, it's no longer published. It stopped last year. And I wrote an article about my trip to the conference as well. And I felt quite brave doing that. I felt quite pleased with myself. And since then, I've been to some drowning prevention conferences as well, and looked deeply into what enables people to learn to swim, because obviously that's very important for drowning prevention. And the presentations that I've done there have had a big impact on swimming, but mostly through sort of Chinese whispers, it seems. So it's the aquatics industry as a whole, I think, is very ready to hear from Elaine.
No.
So, you know, I do have a huge amount of work that I've collected up, you know, in this bibliography, which to back up my arguments and to back up Elaine's arguments. So yes, there's a lot of very positive things that are going to come ahead. That's the way I feel anyway. And it's brilliant to be here speaking to you all. I'm just so excited. So
Great.
it's my last
Beautiful.
I don't know, does anyone want to go next? What about you, Mark? Do you want to go next?
Yeah. Well, I do think that the times are changing. There are more and more I see in scientific publications that they don't say anymore that we are completely wrong. They keep silent about it. When we Google the words aquatic or water site or in scientific publications of anthropology, the last 5 years we see an enormous race of the mentioning of not the names of Elaine Morgan or some of the words like water site, aquatic, and so on. I do think they are. I sense. I have the feeling that there is a serious change in the minds of the anthropologists. They start to be aware that they might have been wrong all those times. I think within 5 or 10 years it will be changed, but perhaps I'm completely wrong. But that is what I think already 30 years or 40 years already. But I do think when we can make a construct, and how do you say that in English? When you set out the words, the number of words that mention water site and aquatic and so on, of littoral, and there is an enormous increase. It started almost suddenly about 5 years ago, and then every year there's a lot more that we see those words. So at Elaine's 100th birthday, I think we finally might have a breakthrough. At least that's what I hope.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. What about you, Erica? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, sure, I can. I've been studying human freediving physiology for over 30 years, actually. And the interest for studying this was not from Elaine's book, but it was the other way around. I was fascinated by the human diving ability, and I couldn't understand it as a biologist because we were all explained to be terrestrial or even savanna animals, and this didn't make sense to me because all other animals that had this type of physiological reflexes and abilities, they had evolved in water or on the water side. So when I, by accident or by coincidence, just found Elaine's book, it was like, aha, this can really be explained, because it was a mystery to me. And that was a big support for my continued studies until now in understanding how human physiology works when we don't breathe and how we pace our diving, etc. And I have studied the AMA divers of Japan that are very expert divers, and the Bajo water people in Indonesia, and other groups of divers, including competition divers that actually have extended human diving to beyond 100 meters on 100 meters of depth on one breath and 300 meters of underwater swimming on one breath, which is still amazing, and I cannot let go before I understand how it really happens. But it happens, and we are very much resembling, for instance, the sea otters in our diving abilities. We can spend many hours on the seafloor foraging for food, as can some semi-aquatic animals. And I'm still fascinated by this, but it was very interesting when very recently I was funded by people very interested in why people drown. So after 30 years, I'm now switching around my viewpoint from how can we do this successfully to how come not all human divers are successful. And this is also a refreshing kind of twitch to my science. I have to explain why people not always are successful in diving. And I think that will kind of complete the story for me when I've done this for another 10 years or so, in understanding, for instance, why the AMA don't seem to have a problem with the blackout when you lose consciousness from hypoxia. But our type of divers in the Western world that learn by themselves, not from the parents maybe even, we sometimes fail to dive successfully. And that is one of the main arguments against this theory, that people actually drown a lot, or a lot, but at least repeatedly, and we have to learn how to swim. My kids were introduced to baby swimming very early, so I know you can learn how to swim by yourself. And actually the Bajau, they use a very typical human swimming style that is like children when they first swim, when you put them in water. They don't swim breaststroke and free stroke or anything like that, but they swim very efficiently. And we're just done with a study on the function of the feet of these people, and the human foot is very, very excellent for this type of swimming that is used by the Bajau. We haven't published it, so don't tell anyone. But it's amazing how well adapted we are. But that being said, I think it's also like Mark said, it's a little bit changing right now. I think it's so many more studies on the shell middens in South America and other parts of the world where they are analyzing much more carefully what these shell middens have been through and why they exist. And also I was so amazed by this study with Neanderthals, where it was shown that they're using shell tools that were picked up when the shells were alive. So obviously this is a very old feature, because at least the Neanderthals were sharing it. So it's not a very recent thing that most of the anthropologists are claiming. But I also feel that it's very important to open up to saying, I mean, we have actually as a group, if we are a group, adopted the same kind of strategy towards them as they have had towards us in the beginning, that you are all wrong and this cannot be. But we have to kind of let them in the discussion. Of course, people have been running around on the savannah at some point. It's only that we believe that most of our features were explained by earlier events that were related to waterside. So I think we have to moderate this kind of some of these kinds of arguments a little bit, to let in and to point out which specific features we claim happened early because we were in contact with water. And then I think that it will solve itself, that this part of this window of human evolution will be viewed upon in a different way. I think sometimes it has been to put hard against hard, because we have found them a bit stupid sometimes. So we shouldn't do the same mistake. I think we should let them in. I've had nice discussions with many anthropologists when I have introduced this idea and said this is not the only explanation, it's just part of the explanation, and much of what you have done all your life is also part of the explanation. So I think it's only when we come to that we can really be listened to, because otherwise we are pulling the carpet from their feet, and nothing that they say could be acceptable. And I think they're doing a good job. They just don't understand this part of human evolution yet.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Facts they bring forward are most of the time correct, of course, but the interpretations are wrong, completely wrong. we can't say it's partly true. It is not.
But the truth is that we don't know and they don't know. So we have to kind of put the puzzle together from both sides. And they have a massive amount of studies, even if we consider some of them based on the wrong basis. It's just to work on. I'm not working as a researcher on the AAT. I'm working as a physiologist to dig out the details on how we dive. That's my job. Like everyone is working in different fields. We have to keep on publishing. In the end, it will solve itself, I think.
Yeah.
Well, but when they are speaking about endurance running, and that's clearly absolute nonsense. We can't let them say that. There are a few people in Africa who do that, running after antelopes until the antelope drop dead. But it's very, very recent. It has nothing to do with the majority of humans. There's only a very limited population in Africa that a few people do that. But
yeah, but Mark, we can still.
We can't call it otherwise. It's nonsense, endurance running, and so we can't let them say that.
We can let them say that, but let's tell them about the diving populations. I have done a study showing that you don't need to dive for several days to get a fish. You know, if you want an antelope, you have to run for 3 days. But if you want a fish, you have to dive for 10 minutes. It will be obvious to all the other outside spectators that this is more efficient. So let them have the antelope, I mean.
What about Małgorzata? You want to say something?
Very much so. If possible. Thanks again for having me here. I'm just a humble translator, or I would rather say I'm the proudest translator to Polish of Elaine's work, because it's been a pleasure, and this Her Descent of Woman was a transformative book in my life, and I really on this. I don't have really much scientific. I'm not a scientist, so I don't really have scientific work behind me, but do you know that actually it's a very strong coincidence that today, the 7th of November, is also the birthday of Marie Curie, and it is so, which I found out today, the day of the feminists.
Really?
And yes, so this is for me, it's a very, nice kind of coincidence, because it's Elaine who actually, as I said once before, without even using the word, she made me the feminist. And I do believe, and I even wrote a couple of little things about this, that part of the resistance to her work was obviously this radical change of perspective. And this sentence in The Descent of Woman, when she says, "Oh, so now I thought that the first human was a man." So this change of perspective must have been a slap in the face to the male academia, and I'm not at all surprised that it takes the best of men to kind of go behind it and see the real content behind it without being offended. And I think this sort of resistance actually still exists, because just a couple of days ago I read a text, an article about hunting women in Andes. It was so full of surprise that women hunting, how? It's like it was a sensation in itself, even though in Camuset there are already remnants of hunting women from 17,000 years ago. So this is like, I think this is a big part of it, this sort of thing, and I always admired. I don't know if I did the justice to the text, because this is one of the loveliest written books I've ever read. but I always admired the courage courage and persistence with which Elaine held on to her ideas, and at the same time, the sweetest gentleness, that you know, the kindness and the calmness. This is for me something like really, I don't have it myself, and I would so much love to do it. And thanks to her, I had the chance of seeing so much amazing work. And this book, which was really like, yes, of course, this was the thing that I was missing in all evolution book. Of course, we have a nose and it's strange. Of course, we have a naked skin and it's strange. So it was like breathtakingly mind-opening, and she's the woman of my life. And Argis, if you ever allow me, I would love to be your translator to Polish too. And I'm so happy to have met her and to have the chance to read this and meet all this work that followed, all the books, all the writings that you gentle people did, really. And thanks for having me here. And I haven't read the book Argis yet, but for some family reasons, but I'm so looking forward to it. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, what about Stephen? Stephen, I'm a bit concerned because Stephen, it must be very late in Canberra. Do you want to say some words before you go to bed?
Thanks very much, Argus, for allowing us all to be here together. It's thanks to you writing this book that we can all do that, and I really appreciate it, and congratulations on writing a book on such a worthy topic. I think we all here have been inspired by Elaine and her work, and I still certainly remember vividly the moment reading Descent of Woman by Elaine, that moment where I thought, of course, it's obvious that water and wading and swimming and diving and foraging in water played an important role in human evolution, much more important than had previously been considered. And the other thing that Elaine did, of course, was show how the savanna theory, the hunting man theory of human evolution really had no basis or foundation. And so we have to, I think, thank Elaine for that. And so you writing a book on this is a real credit to you. I remember I was fortunate enough to meet Elaine when I was in Europe studying for my PhD, and I remember her as being a gracious and generous and a humble woman who it was really a highlight of my life, being able to meet her. And once again, I think it's fantastic that you've written a book, Argus, on such a worthy topic and an important book. So thanks again for allowing us all to be here together, and congratulations again on the book.
Well, look, I think we should round it up then. So I don't know if anyone here wants to say something. I don't know if anyone wants to say. I don't want to put any pressure on.
Well done, Dad. Well done, Dad.
Oh yeah, I should just say, if you do download the book at the moment, there are a couple of errors, and I have fixed them. In whatever device you use, you just basically remove the latest version and then re-download it, and it'll be updated in the next few days, hopefully. So I mean, it's nothing drastic. There's just it's always that thing. Whenever you read a piece of work, you suddenly spot errors you hadn't spotted before, and so I was really embarrassed, so I put another version up, and I will make sure that I put a new version up every year on her birthday, so to sort of kind of keep it going and update. I'm going to produce a paperback version in 6 months. That's the plan. So
That's good.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, everyone, for giving us your time, and it's lovely to have so many people. We've got someone from Canada, we've got Canberra, we've got Poland, we've got Belgium. What else have we got? We've got England. It's amazing. So and then
It's on Greece.
Sweden.
Sweden, of course, Sweden. Very. Okay, well,
Algiers,
yes,
don't forget to secure the recording of this.
I've got the recording. I'm going to produce a video. I'm going to try and edit bits and make it sort of look better, and then I'll send everyone.
Very good.
Great.
Great job, Algis.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Aldous. Thank you, Aldous, for doing this.
Pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Peace, everyone.
Bye.
Well done, Mark. You're a hero. My tribute to Elaine Morgan is available on all Amazon websites around the world. If you do buy it and read it and like it, please write a favourable review and share a link to anybody you know who might be interested in human evolution. Thank you very much.